Just going to go on and just think about the woman at the well. I said it's the second part. It's really extending what we were doing about Jesus meets this Samaritan woman at the well, and they have this long, convoluted conversation about, well, she's having a conversation about water in a bucket coming out the well, and Jesus is having a conversation about living spiritual water. And it takes some time for her to get it. Perhaps just starting from John 4:10 there. She's not sure Jesus can provide water for her. But she says, Jesus answered, "If you know what God gives and who it is that is asking you for a drink, you would ask him and he would give you life-giving water." "Sir," the woman said, "you haven't got a bucket and the well is deep. Where would you get that life-giving water? It was our ancestor Jacob who gave us this well. He and his sons and his flocks all drank from it. You don't claim to be greater than Jacob, do you?" And Jesus answered, "Whoever drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring, which will provide him with life-giving water and give him eternal life." "Sir," the woman said, "give me that water, then I will never be thirsty again, nor will I have to come here to draw water." "Go and call your husband," Jesus told her, "and come back." "I haven't got a husband," she answered. And Jesus replied, "You are right when you say you haven't got a husband. You've been married to 5 men, and the man you live with now is not really your husband. You have told me the truth." "I see you're a prophet, sir," the woman said. "My Samaritan ancestors worship God on this mountain, but you Jews say that Jerusalem is the place where we should worship God." And Jesus said to her, "Believe me, woman, the time will come when people will not worship the Father either on this mountain or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans do not really know whom you worship, but we Jews know whom we worship, because it is from the Jews that salvation comes. But the time is coming and is already here when by the power of God's Spirit people will worship the Father as he really is, offering him the true worship that he wants. God is Spirit, and only by the power of his Spirit can people worship him as he really is." The woman said to him, "I know that the Messiah will come, and when he comes, he will tell us everything." And Jesus answered, "I am he, I whom you are talking with, who is talking with you." And at that moment, Jesus' disciples returned, and they were greatly surprised to find him talking to a woman. But none of them said to her, "What do you want?" or asked him, "Why are you talking with her?" Then the woman left her water jar, went back to the town, and said to the people there, "Come and see the man who told me everything I have ever done. Could he be the Messiah?" So they left the town and went to Jesus. In this conversation that goes on, I want to pick up on the phrase when Jesus says to the woman, "If you only knew who I was and what it is that God gives, you would ask me and I would give you this life-giving water." Just pick up those two things and run with them a bit. If only you knew who's talking to you and what's on offer. And just that sense of, if only you knew how good this is, and if only you knew how good I am, then you would ask. Who would not ask? Just think about, first of all then, this life-giving water and what is on offer. Very often you and I do not ask because we underestimate. Well, all right then. Yeah, I suppose so. Oh, I suppose it's quite interesting, or quite blessing, or fairly exciting, or whatever it is. He says to this woman in one way away, if you only knew what you're missing, if you only knew what was here, you would be up for this. You would be asking me. And although all of you at the beginning of me talking to you about life-giving water would say, we've heard sermons about life-giving water before, we know all that stuff, we know the metaphor, we know this. We often do this at Pentecost, you know. The message from the Bible is, no, you don't. You are always underestimating this. It's always being undersold. If only you knew, you'd be up for this. He says of this water, this is bubbling up water. I mentioned this last week. It's a unique Greek word in the New Testament. It's like a sort of a great bubbling thing. It's a fountain bursting up, leaping up. It's not the usual word for water at all. I remember seeing some pictures once of an artesian well in the desert where I think in those days it was Gaddafi had struck water somewhere in Libya. And it wasn't a fountain. It was just going boom, boom, all this huge amount of water. That sort of picture. Now, in less happier times, you'll have seen pictures where there are real floods and the water is coming up under the manhole covers. And it's lifting them and it's shooting up through the keyholes and like this. And it's bad news for somebody, but it's very impressive. It's that kind of thing. Really lively. Very different to the water in a well. We are always interested in things that are going to liven us up. Well, I think we are. I hope you are anyway. I have always been interested in things that give you a bit of buzz. And by a bit of buzz, I do not mean sitting on a deck chair on Marazion Beach, all right? It might be very nice for me, climbing a really dodgy mountain without the right kit gives me a buzz. Or jumping out of an aircraft with a parachute gives me a buzz. Or that kind of thing, a bit edgy. So I'm telling you as somebody who's had experience of this, let's do something, yes. And Jesus says it's better than that. It's much better than that. I think we've got a line from an old hymn in our hymns. From the best bliss that earth imparts, we turn unfilled to thee again. Whatever you've done, whatever you've tried, whatever sort of works for you, this is better than that. Yeah? This is better than that. And remember what we said last week about this? This was Jacob's well. This is not just about physical water. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, this is God's well, this is God's water. And that God is providing her with this water, but it's kind of a background way. So this is a spiritual thing as well. And Jesus is saying, the life water I will give you, the spiritual water I will give you, will not be like your normal spirituality that you come for. Perhaps you go to the temple once a year. Perhaps you come to your sort of Samaritan synagogue. And it keeps you going and you believe in God. They didn't have atheists in those days. They believed in God. They had a spirituality. They knew about it. You plod on believing from week after week. This is where it is. This is not like that. It'll keep you alive, but it's not like that. This is it's water, but not as we know it. No? I think so. And if you and me are used to our weekly diet of spirituality, which will keep you alive like the water in a well would, this is not what Jesus offers. It's far more than that. Do not settle for that. And it says, not only is this water like this artesian well, but it's actually inside of you. There's an extraordinary analogy. It's coming up here. It's one of those things you can't do in family services. You just cannot produce this illustration of it coming up inside of you. It's internal. Now, her water is external. She's got to go to the bucket. She's got to get it out again. The idea of something internal. I managed to progress this week from medi-walks. I was talking about medi-walks last week, where you just go for a walk because you're not feeling very well. I had a medi-run this week. Oh, dear. You need a tracksuit and a scarf and a hat and... but so I'm running, I'm still there, And you think, you get really hot when you're running like that. You get hot in here, and you get sweaty. I need the soap after that, It's really... But it's heat from in here. It's different to being cold and sitting in front of electric fire. That warms you from outside rather than warms you from inside. So this is an internal thing, not an external thing. Here it is, he says, water within you, not just from the well. And again, the well, looking at Jacob's well, a spiritual thing. This is not a spirituality that comes from outside just, that you plug into when you go to the synagogue or to the temple. This is within you. I think this interiority is huge, isn't it? Because you and I were brought up with a Christology that talks about Jesus as our friend who walks alongside us and helps us. That is true, but it gives you an outside feel. One who is there, who helps you. Even at Pentecost, we think about being refilled with the Spirit. Nothing wrong with that. But this sense of interiority, I wonder whether you feel sometimes that your spirituality is something which is, using the water impression, is sprayed on from the outside. Some of you have got these little spray gun things that make a mist of water, you know? Have you got those? Posh people use them on their house plants, don't they? I once saw somebody I just say this because I was at a garden party at Cambridge, and somebody was spraying the sandwiches with them, so they didn't go curly. You see, I see a lot of you have been to garden parties at Cambridge, but that's really quite a strong feeling, isn't it, of our experience of the Spirit of God being sprayed on in a holy mist from the outside to refresh us and to clean us. It's quite different to coming up from the inside, isn't it? And which brings us to what he says. This will be eternal. This is the Holy Grail, isn't it? A totally renewable source of energy here, he says. This is within us unto eternal life. You will never have to come and drink this again. She's very impressed with this. She keeps on coming back for one bucket after another after another. If only we could have some source that wasn't having to be renewed all the time. At the end of the day, we need more food and more water, more sunlight. We've got this new system here without hardly any wires, because all these microphones have got batteries in, but Frank's got a machine at the back to recharge all those batteries because they go flat. It has to be renewed. And this source of this Spirit that God offers is actually permanent. It doesn't run down. Coming back to our spray thing, you know, how often do we come to worship and we are refreshed, but it dries off? By Monday, it's kind of not there. And then we have another, and that's a good thing in a way that we are continuing to pray and to come to the Lord and be refreshed. But this is not my metaphor, it's Jesus' metaphor. It will be like an artesian well within you. So yes, we need to persevere with our spirituality, but there is a sense in which the Spirit will never run down of his own accord. He will never become tired. He will always be there as a dynamic within our heart. This liveliness that is not flat, this interiority which goes to the heart of the matter, this sense of not running down but being permanent, who would not seek that? The only people who would not seek that are those who really have got used to the flatness, have got used to being gently sprayed, and who've got used to just coming back again and again and again and again for a little bit of this and a little bit of that. They are the ones who would say, oh, that'll be all right. I cannot enthuse you with this any more than Jesus could enthuse the woman with it. But he was prophetic. He said, if only you knew what it was. And so in a very small way this morning, it's quite good to be able to say, when you come to the communion, when we come to the Lord, I'm not here to be just resprayed. I'm not here just for a little bit more of this, that, or the other, good as that might be. And as with the water from a well, something which will keep me alive. And just that. If only you knew what it was. I think in our mission, in our sharing of the faith with the people around us, it's really something we need to try and get across. If only you knew, we need to say to people. If only you knew, you'd want this. And they'll say, well, it'd be good to see that in you then I'd know. Yeah? But he doesn't just say that. He says, and if you knew who it is who's giving it to you, if you knew who it is offering you as well. And Jesus reveals the truth about himself. And you can see this pretty toughly. This is not just Jesus sitting by the well having a nice chat with a lady talking about encouraging spiritual water. you look at, to start off with, you can see this lordship. He says to the woman, with no by or leave, give me a drink of water. Right? Then later on he says, in that business about the Samaritans and the temple, he says, you Samaritans don't know what you're talking about. Then he says, come and bring your husband. And then he says, you haven't got a husband, have you? You've got a bloke. You've had 5 husbands. This is not public relations at its best, is it? Jesus is very firm here. This is not just a cuddly chap by the well. We have the lordship of Christ here. This is God's only Son. This is the Messiah who is seeking to reveal himself to her. And in fact, she begins to get it right at the end when he tells her all about her history. If only you knew who it is who's asking, you would come and you would ask him, can I deliver this? Is this not just Alastair talking about a nice idea? Or do I know who it is who offers it? Because I know that if it was me offering it, I couldn't deliver it. But if the Lord Jesus Christ offers it, he can deliver it. Most people these days are not particularly worried about the gospel of Jesus being good news. They don't think it's not good news. They don't think it's real. So they don't think it's real news. And however good you make it sound, if it's not real, it's not worth worrying about. But Jesus, who is the Lord, can deliver this. If only you knew it was, you would ask him because he would deliver it. But not only that. The lordship of Jesus is shown by the fact that he sees right through her. Now, this is one of the great verses of the Bible, isn't it? Come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. That is a great verse. I don't know if it's a great feeling, but it's a great verse. You come to communion this morning and you come to meet someone who could tell you everything you ever did. Is that good news or bad news? It's salutary. It's a sign of his authority and power with this woman. But she doesn't run away, go into her house and hide into a cupboard until he's left. She isn't so scared and worried and anxious about this. No. She actually goes and gets all her mates, and they all come to see the man who told her everything she ever did. I can't do psychoanalysis of her as to why she does that, but I can tell you that this is an extraordinary thing, that he who looks right through her, and it's not good news, is the same person who 5 minutes before had been offering her this new life. Before that, he'd said, ask and I will give you the Spirit in your heart. And he doesn't say, after we've sorted out you and the 5 men and the bloke and the husbands and all that, and done an alpha course. He doesn't say that. It's up front, I love you now, although I know you warts and all. Do not think, as some people will give you the impression in preaching, that there's a real challenge here, because if you ask the Spirit into your heart, he will get into your heart and have a look round and see all the bad things. As if he needs to get in there. God knows us from start to finish, whether we like it or not, and whether we invite him to look or not. This is the greatness of God. I knew you before you were born. I know everything about you. And yet I still offer you this because I love you. Would you not ask from a God who is like that? Who sees through you, but still says, I love you. Still says, have this living water, with a no qualification. Now, there are things to be sorted. Not saying a woman doesn't need to be sorted. He says to her, bring the bloke back. She comes back with all those people from the village she's trying to avoid all the time by coming at lunchtime to get the water. This is definitely a new day. It's like Jesus saying, I see all of your life. Let's get it all out on the table, shall we? We'll get it all on the table and we'll start to sort it out. There is that sense of meeting with Jesus that brings out the truth in the whole situation. And these two things go together. The truth and the Spirit. If only you knew who it is and how good it is, you'd ask. And in the middle of the passage where we have this, we're going to have a sort of diversion into temples and where to worship. Jesus brings out at the very centre of it God is spirit, and those who worship him will worship in spirit and in truth. To worship is to come before the Lord and meet with him and encounter him in the spirit within us, which brings us to him, but also in the opening out of the truth as he reveals himself to us and he reveals us to us, the God who loves us and draws us together. So this morning you think, I can come to worship, I can come to encounter Jesus in the spirit and in truth, for he knows me. He knows all that I've ever done and still loves me and still offers me this life-giving water. If only you knew who it is who loves you, knowing everything, you'd ask him. He's not going to tell you off. He's not going to send you on a course. He said, let's do the water first, and then we'll get everything else out on the table. Sort that. And if only you knew how good it was, you would not want to sing a song before communion. But we will. So the band are going to come in.